Yeah, hello everyone. Good evening. Hello, Sal. How are you tonight?
I'm fine, thank you. A little tired.
We will have,
Been a
yeah,
long day.
yeah, you said previously. Yeah. So I was at Speed's channel. It was fun to watch them reviewing our stream yesterday with Top Dog, and
He
I had
he
really
needs to
fun.
catch up. There were let me see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There were 5 shows yesterday. He's only covering one. He needs to up his game. And there are 5 shows today. I mean, he
Wow,
he's got a backlog.
another 5 shows today.
Yeah, there are 2 on my channel, one on SFT's channel, and then this show. So there are going to be more shows, and he never covers as far as I could tell, he doesn't really cover some of the ones that like the one Change Tan and James Carter and I did on Eukaryotes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah.
Maybe
I
it
mean,
floats over their head.
of course, you require much more time to review a stream than making it, because you have to stop and then 3, 4 people want to give an opinion of something that has been
Yeah.
said, and of course that takes much more time. But anyway, so I want to go right away to my topic tonight, which is about the ribosome, which is, in my understanding, not only my understanding, but also according to some science papers, which I will show, a 3D printer. And I think that this is very nice evidence for a creator. So let me put here the PowerPoint and share the screen. And let's dive into it. Okay, how can I put that bigger here? Okay, so that is the ribosome. We have here the bacterial and the eukaryotic ribosome. And I did find this paper today, Sal, and it is pretty interesting because you see here in red that these proteins here, they are only in eukaryotic cells. And here the lila, how do you say in English? What color is that in English? Purple.
That's red. Red?
Yeah, that is red here, and back in bacteria only, that is purple, right?
Ah, okay.
So these parts which are in purple, they are only found in bacteria. And you see many red proteins here in the eukaryotic ribosome, which only exist in eukaryotes. So this is an interesting observation. I don't know why, but I mean, if there was supposedly a common ancestor, then he would have had to diversify to add these proteins here in the eukaryotic ribosome. And we know that the eukaryotic ribosome is pretty much more complex than the bacterial and prokaryotic ribosome.
Yes, and I'll mention Michael Behe believes in common descent. So let's just say, just for the sake of argument, there's common descent. It still requires a miracle of making those proteins and integrating them.
Well, I mean, I am studying the assembly of the ribosome for weeks now, and what I can say is that I will take many years in order to even have a basic grasp how the ribosome is assembled together. It is probably, I don't think I have seen a more complex biogenesis pathway for a protein than the ribosome. Do you know of any other one?
That would be top. It would be very high on the list, partly because it's it's a very big complex. It's a very large complex. And George Church was the one who suggested to Stephen Meyer, look at or the ID community said, look at the ribosome.
Mm.
That's very complex. So I'm not aware of any. Now, the eukaryotic ribosome is complex on many, many levels.
Let me just put that quote here from
yes, go
a
ahead.
dialogue between Craig Ventner and George Church, and that's really fun what they said. Let me just put that here on the screen. Just a minute.
I have another screen here. And I can monitor. I can actually see a little better on my other screen. I'd like to thank all the viewers for joining us here today and also by recording.
Okay, let me read that. Church, the ribosome, both looking at the past and at the future, is a very significant structure. It's the most complicated thing that is present in all organisms. Craig does comparative genomics, and you find that almost the only thing that's in common across all organisms is the ribosome. And it's recognizable. It's highly conserved. And so the question is, how did that thing come to be? And if I were to be an intelligent design defender, that's what I would focus on. How did the ribosome come to be? Because it does a really great thing. It does this mutual information trick, but not from changing something kind of trivial from DNA to RNA. That's really easy. It can change from DNA 3 nucleotides into 1 amino acid. That's really marvelous. But isn't it the case that if we take all the life forms we have so far, isn't the minimum for the ribosome about 53 proteins and 3 polynucleotides? And hasn't that kind of already reached a plateau where adding more genomes doesn't reduce that number of proteins? And Venter, below ribosomes, yes, you certainly can't get below that. And Church, but that's what we need to do. Otherwise, they'll call it irreducible complexity. If you say you can't get below a ribosome, we're in trouble, right? We have to find a ribosome that can do its trick with less than 53 proteins. And Venter, in the RNA world, you didn't need ribosomes. And Church, but we need to construct that. Nobody has constructed a ribosome that works well without proteins. And Venter, yes. To me, the key thing about Darwinian evolution is selection. Biology is 100% dependent on selection. No matter what we do in synthetic biology, synthetic genomes, we're doing selection. It's just not natural selection anymore. It's intelligently designed selection. So it's a unique subset, but selection is always part of it. And Venter, we have synthetic ribosomes in our lab. They're just not totally efficient right now. We didn't design them. We're copying the design. I think this is a very remarkable conversation between the two. What do you think?
Yes, and enough so that I'd like to get a cut and paste of that exchange or wherever it came from. I can perhaps Google it.
Okay.
But
so
that is one thing I wanted to say. What we're doing here is trying to go through the parts. See, it's one thing for someone to have of authority like George Church to say it, and that's the start. But then to actually try to look at the ribosome in piece by piece, it becomes overwhelming. And in fact, we have to start with the bacterial one because that's the only one. Dr. Tan told me that's the only one we can actually construct in the lab. The eukaryotic ribosome is so complex, we can't build one in vitro. So a lot of the way we study protein complexes is we have to take it out of the cell and try to study it individually. We could subject it to electron cryomicroscopy and maybe X-ray crystallography. We can't do that with the eukaryotic ribosome. We can't extract it out of the cell and try to rebuild it in the lab yet. I don't know that we ever will. So we work with the bacterial one, and that's pretty hard.
I remember that I read in one of the papers that when a ribosome RNA is synthesized through the ribosome and comes out from the ribosome, then it is immediately attached to a chaperone, which prevents it to fold. Otherwise, it can fold wrongly and not at the right place. And then it is transported, for example, from the nucleus to the cytosol, where further assembly goes on. So this is a very precisely orchestrated process. And if you don't have these cofactors and chaperones, then you cannot build the ribosome. So this demonstrates that this is an all or nothing business. Either you have everything right there from the beginning, able to start and make the ribosome, but a stepwise evolutionary process is not possible, because let's suppose you don't have the chaperone which binds the ribosomal RNA when it comes out of the ribosome and it folds at the wrong moment, then it will be it cannot be used then in the end assembly. So doesn't that indicate irreducible complexity, Sal?
I don't like using that term. It does indicate that we need simultaneous part. I would just call it unevolvable complexity.
Yeah, you can say that it must be simultaneously there in order for the whole.
Yeah, go on. I apologize for interrupting you. Go ahead.
It must, rather than using IC, we could use a simultaneous presence, which has to be there of all these assembly proteins and parts in order for the ribosome to be able to be built.
I have something that's going to really irritate people like Dr. Dan. I'll call it unevolvable complexity. Unevolvable complexity. Because if he manages to cite something that he claims this was unevolvable complexity and I evolved it, here's the data, I'll say, well, that's proof it wasn't unevolvable. So he'll never be able to pull that trick that he was pulling with you, and same with Dapper Dino. You see, that's what honestly, I think rhetorical tricks. So I'll just say unevolvable complexity.
I think that I learned a lot. I think that I learned actually some things in my conversation with both of them, with Dan and Dapper Dino, and I mean, maybe it's actually good that rather than to use a concept in a general sense from the micro to the macro, as you said, Saul, that we actually look into each system individually and then scrutinize it and investigate if it is possible to evolve or not. That would be another good approach.
Yeah, what I'll just say is I will postulate this is unevolvable complexity, because then they can't play these rhetorical games where they say, hey, I found something that was irreducibly complex and then it evolved. If we use the term unevolvable complexity and then they evolve something, it just falsifies. They're not able to falsify. They basically will be self-refuting if they say, hey, I found something unevolvable and I evolved it. And I said, well, that's proof it wasn't unevolvable. You picked the wrong system. And so, because I've been in this, I've been engaging and just seeing the rhetorical tricks. And it's just like, no, we can outsmart them, because that's their last resort, is to just use rhetoric and equivocation. So I'm just suggesting if we use the term unevolvable complexity, they'll never be able to pull that stunt again on you. where they'll say, hey, look at this paper. I have proof that we can evolve something that's unevolvable. And I'm just like, well, that's a contradiction in terms. What they did do is they say, hey, I found an irreducibly complex system that evolved. And it's like, like you and me, we don't have time to be just combing through all that. It's probably nonsense. I don't have time for it. But if we use the term unevolvable complexity, they won't be able to pull that stunt anymore. And that's the only reason that I de-emphasize the term. I mean, the concept is generally right, but we don't have to use that. We have to use a term that they can't play around with. And they're playing around with the complex.
If you say it's an unevolvable complexity, then they will say, well, but you need to come up with a known framework or hypothesis which we can test and then say if it is
unevolvable. Yeah, I'll give you, in principle, this is testable. Let's take a bacteria and see if it evolves into a eukaryote. And there's something that they miss. If they keep saying that bacteria, that the prokaryotic form is deeply conserved. Oh, we got cut off. If they keep saying the prokaryotic form is deeply conserved, what does that mean? It means it doesn't evolve into anything else. I'm like, don't you guys study your own theory? Don't you guys study your own theory? If you argue something is conserved, that means it doesn't change. Variations to it are lethal. So, I'm just saying your own terms, their own terminology kind of highlights the fact that it's unevolvable. They will have to appeal to some ancestor that's a little bit more malleable that we can't possibly define or test. So if they're going to play the game, it's like we have to have something testable. I said, well, the irony is you don't have anything testable. You're just making this assertion, and it's not consistent with theory, and it's not consistent with your belief that something is deeply conserved as a prokaryote will stay a prokaryote. So there's more of a problem on their camp than ours.
Well, I think that the ribosome is a prime example of the huge problem of the entire evolutionary thinking, which presupposes that things are going from simple to complex. But if the ribosome is basically one of the most complex structures that are known in biology, and it had to be there even for life to start, then what does that say to us?
It says abiogenesis is a miracle. Now, the step of the prokaryotic to eukaryotic ribosome was what contributed to change Tan becoming a creationist. I actually don't know what came first. She was not a Christian. She became a Christian when she came to the USA. I don't know if she became a Christian first or a creationist first, but a Nobel Prize winner, George Smith, was the one who, it was through his encouragement, he said, told Dr. Tan to teach molecular biology. Now, her background was in physical organic chemistry, but that's very well qualified. That qualified her to do something like molecular biology. She had to learn a lot of cellular stuff, but she had all the chemical and physics background to understand. And when she studied the difference between the prokaryotic versus the eukaryotic form, she said this can't evolve. That was the beginning of her creationist. That was the beginning of her creationist views, if I recall her correctly. I could be mischaracterizing her personal story. But
do you have contact with her? Do you know her?
Yeah, I had a video with her.
Well, why don't you invite her to have a conversation here at my channel or at yours?
Yeah, she came at my channel. We were talking about eukaryotic evolution with James Carter. And to my knowledge, there was no weather report on that. I'm just like, okay, guys. So when you have a Harvard-trained Ivy League professor talking with me, and then there's also a professional biochemist, it's like, okay, why don't you criticize what we said?
I would love to have her at my channel or at yours, and to have some lectures on the assembly and biogenesis process of the ribosome.
Well, I'm sorry. Go ahead. I didn't mean to talk over you, Otangelo.
Well, as I said, I would love to have her either at your or my channel to talk about the biogenesis of the ribosome.
I will have her on my channel, and the way I can get her, by the way, I'm getting letters from her every other day because Dr. she's working on a project. She's helping Dr. Sanford and I on her project. So I do hear from her professionally, but I don't want to, I don't want to ask too many favors of her because right now what she's contributing is really important to my job. So I don't want to strain that relationship. She's helping us on a peer-reviewed paper. And so let me say this. How about after our paper is published? But I'll tell you this. I don't know if you saw the molecular biology class that I'm teaching. That's actually Dr. Tan's class. I advertised it because I'm redoing her molecular biology class. I have the first one, the first lecture. And so there is a point, most of the lecture, half of the lecture series is on the prokaryotes, the others on the eukaryotes. Part of that will actually be talking about the biogenesis of ribosomes between each. So she, as you know, she was the lead author of Stairway to Life, because Rob Stadler's very fluent in English and he has a very good public presence. Most people associate the Stairway to Life with Rob, but actually the first edition of the book was written by Change Tan solo. And I reviewed that one too. That was a brutally difficult read. I crawled reading it. And so Rob Stadler made it a lot more accessible. But the point where I was going was, it was in her study of things like the ribosomal genesis between prokaryotes and eukaryotes, plus a lot of other things. She said, this is a miracle. She may not have used those words, but she got to see it. So I asked her, what inspired you to write the book Stairway to Life? She said, well, it actually began first when she was studying the eukaryotes and prokaryotes. But then she said, well, if this is a problem, why don't we go back one step to abiogenesis? So my understanding is it's in the back of her mind to write a book on the eukaryote, prokaryote evolution. And I offered to work with her on that too, but I have to complete reteaching her molecular biology course. So on my other computer, I can put a link to my to the lecture I did with on Dr. Tan. She provided me the PowerPoints, and then I edited it a little bit and just did the narration. She said I did a really good job. She's referring her students to the way that I taught it, which I'm a little bit scared. But I'm going to put that in the chat here. And you could see and then I'll also put in the chat the talk that Dr. James Carter and Dr. Tan and then I had on eukaryotic evolution. We didn't even talk about the ribosome. We were talking about nuclear transport, but we could have gone on for hours. So let me find my, if you could take over for a little bit, and I'm going to be just trying to
yeah, sure. No, while you're looking, well, what I rarely see, Saul, is talking about the evolution of bacteria, because bacteria, they are having such a huge variety, and it is rarely touched that topic. And bacteria, they basically occupy every decent space in ecology, and they are essential for the energy cycles. And various kinds of bacteria are required, and with very different metabolic pathways. And how that evolved, that is truly something which I've not seen so often being mentioned. And I think it is a hugely interesting topic. And it's interesting that Eugene Koonin has written a science paper on that. And he said that eukaryotes and prokaryotes, they are so distant one from each other, so different, that one has to say that there are two separate and different and distinct origin stories of eukaryotes and prokaryotes. They cannot be the they cannot have the same origin with the less universal common ancestor. And of course, once that this is admitted, then you have to say, well, if one abiogenesis event is hugely unlikely statistically and for several reasons, imagine two separate origins of life. So that is, in my understanding, if you think a little bit further, powerful evidence actually for creation. And of course, once it is admitted that prokaryotes and eukaryotes do not have a common ancestor, then the entire construct of the tree of life basically crumbles down. So you cannot have a tree of life, a universal Darwinian tree of life, if prokaryotes and eukaryotes do not have the same common ancestor. And I think if we are investigating these things, then the huge problem of the naturalistic narrative and evolutionary narrative becomes very, very clear for anyone that studies these things with honesty. I mean, the organelles which had to emerge starting from a precursor, there is such a huge variety, and not only proteins individually, but entire metabolic systems and adaptations to different environments. And you have to have an explanation for this. And there are huge gaps in all this kind of variation that we see in the micro cellular world. Yeah.
I just put in three links to Dr. Tan on my channel. There was one where she actually explains how she wrote the Stairway of Life. It actually began with the eukaryote-prokaryote divide. There's also one where Dr. Tan, Dr. Carter, and I talk about eukaryotic evolution. And then my first molecular biology lecture, my molecular biology lecture, just a redo of Dr. Tan's college version. So I had to obviously adjust it a little bit for the internet, because her original version had things like, okay, here are my office hours, here's my office. And so those things are just kind of extraneous to hosting it on the internet. So I still have to work on that, but I got distracted a little bit because I was doing my chemistry lectures, and then we had that whole thing with the YouTube shutting down my channel temporarily. So there's someone there who's Molecular Alchemy.
Well, he is a frequent guest at Speed's channel. He's an atheist and I think a biochemist or something like that. Yeah.
Why did he get blocked at Speed's channel?
No, I blocked him because I was annoyed by his replies, and so I said, "Oh, listen, I don't want to listen anymore." So I blocked him. But when your annoyance is over and you say, "Oh, okay, so let's try again," and you want to unblock, I don't know how to do it, because here he appears, but there I don't know how to do it.
So anyway, he's here, and well, we're at the half-hour mark. If we actually have short shows, we'll have probably easier time of having material the next day. So if someone wants to join the stream, I really should bail and get some rest, because I have a debate tonight on abiogenesis. Yeah. And just for everyone's knowledge, I'm trying. This is only happening because I promised someone like 7 weeks ago that we're going to debate, and I wanted to be true to my word. But I'm realizing I can't. I can participate in live streams if someone else is hosting it, like you, Otangelo. And so this will be one of the few that where I'm hosting a live stream and also a debate at the same time. But it's very stressful given my circumstances. So anyway, to the viewers, Otangelo and I are still trying to figure out what we're going to do with kind of if this is going to be a daily format. So I'll hang around for a little bit until someone decides to join.
Yeah, we'll wait 5 or 10 minutes.
Sure. I can do that. So what would be good, I don't know, if one way that we actually would have very productive conversations is to go individually to various parts of the actual ribosomal biogenesis. Now, unfortunately, because I haven't gotten to the lectures where Dr. Tan talks about this, I don't know enough at this point. But that's why I'm trying to teach her classes so that I can learn. So one way to learn is by teaching. So I have to go through her lectures, and then also at the same time, I'm trying to do lectures in chemistry, just so that I can relearn a lot of what I've forgotten, because these are things I need to learn to help me professionally in my work. So even the basics I have to crawl through right now, and it also will serve the purpose of making these videos to be able to, in making the videos, it helps me professionally, but then it could help other people that are wanting to learn. So that's what helped make the decision for me to go forward with this project. So to that end, can I do a little promotion?
First, no
Otangelo,
problem.
can you make me a moderator so I can put a link to my chemistry lectures?
You are not a moderator yet at my channel? Well,
No, I have two accounts. One is Evidence and Reasons. The other is Evidence Reasons Academy. So I'm going, if you could make Evidence Reasons Academy a
yeah,
moderator.
Put a sign or something so I can make you a moderator. Just write something. Yeah.
Yeah, I just typed something.
Yeah. Just a moment. I have to change here my account.
Molecular Alchemy says, I agree, Sal. While I don't lecture grad students as often as I did previously, currently about 1 50-minute lecture a year, they certainly useful exercises for refreshing knowledge. Molecular, aren't you a professional biochemist? If so, why are you actually listening to Matt Dillahunty? I'm sorry. Yeah, someone with a high school diploma has no formal degrees. Yeah, and it's understandable why he'll only debate certain topics, because so many of the relevant topics are just so far out of his, he's way out of his depth. So just
Well, they quoted Matt Dillahunty at Speech Channel earlier about something that he said, but basically what he did was a baseless claim, nothing else. He didn't back up what he said. So I don't know how that is somehow worth of something. So
okay, so I don't see that I have a wrench yet. Do I have a wrench?
Yeah, that's exactly right, LPP. If so, why are you actually listening to Matt Dillahunty on the subject? He knows jack squat exactly. He doesn't have a clue at all about biochemistry.
Okay, so here we have a professor who's teaching graduate students, and he's going to listen to some guy with a high school diploma that doesn't have even a bachelor's degree. I'm just like, okay, sorry, I just had to rub that in a little bit. I just can't help the irony.
Yeah. I know him well, and I mean he runs from anyone that he knows that has even a basic grasp of biology and biochemistry and science in general, like he ran from the debate with LPP, and not for the excuses that he brought up, but because he probably saw some videos where LPP destroyed the atheist claims and said, well, I don't want to have this debate. It will make me look bad.
So
yeah, molecular alchemy. So what is his simple inference? Can you quote it here in the side chat, since you don't want to come in? Yeah, yeah. He's whenever a caller calls in at his show and wants to discuss something about origins of life or evolution or something like that, and he says, "Oh, this is an atheist show. Why don't you go and talk to biologists which actually understand this stuff? This is not the right show to talk about these topics because we are not knowledgeable about these things." So,
Oh, and he doesn't see that. You know, this is the thing he said. I could have been really mean. He said, if God showed me the evidence, I could be persuaded. I'm just like, you're presuming you have the intelligence to recognize it, that you have the intelligence and skill. That's an example right there. He's making the claim that he would be persuaded if God did something. I said, maybe the evidence is staring you in the face, but it's way above your head. You didn't account for that possibility, did you? I could have been really mean and said that to him, but oh well.
I put a post at my Facebook timeline and said when Matt Dillahunty, Aaron Ra, and some others of these guys arrive at Judgment Day in front of the white throne, then they will still say that they don't believe that God exists.
You know, the one, I know this is hard to say, but you know, the one thing that is undeniable for each and every person is their own pain. You can't rationalize it. If you're in pain, you can't rationalize it away. It's the one thing you can't deny. And that's the one thing that that after Judgment Day, the people that don't know the Lord, they're going to be having the one thing that they can't deny. That's their own pain. And it'll be there for forever. And I'm just like, you know, God has a way of just really taking it to someone and saying, okay, you want proof? This is the one thing you're not going to be able to deny is this level of pain. And, you know, so Matt is saying, oh, I would be persuaded if you would just show. I'm just like, one, it may be above your head, which you're obviously demonstrating to me. A lot of the good arguments would be above your head, Matt. And when I debated him, I was thinking, this guy's just an intellectual lightweight. I said, I'll just tolerate his antics and his screaming and his false accusations that I'm dishonest. I laughed at him. I think he took offense when I laughed at him. He said, I played crafts for a living. I laughed at him, and he knew I had him because, you know, I'd been kicked out of casinos. But I was like, Matt, you know, you end up in hell. You're going to have so much pain there. And that's the one thing you're not going to be able to deny. And God's going to have a way of just letting you know there's something there that's causing you pain, and you're not going to be able to deny you're in a lot of hurt. And it's just going to stay there, and it's going to be proven to you for eternity. And, you know, you'll have eternity to try to figure out if there are any answers for where this source of pain is coming from. Yeah. And that's kind of the horrible end of these, of where these people are going. Grace has been extended to them. I asked him in my debate, I said, Matt, if you were that blind beggar who was healed in the name when Jesus appeared and healed him,
that was a fantastic. That was such a great point which you made there. So it was really spot on.
Oh, he flipped.
Yeah.
And first he said he didn't. You know, he's not too swift. He didn't understand the reason I was asking, and I even gave a clue earlier in the talk when I mentioned Tracy Harris. He said, "You're just believing the story." I said, "That's not the point. The point is, hypothetically, if you're in that situation, what would you do?" And he said he wouldn't believe. I said, well, then maybe nothing would persuade you. He went livid.
Yeah.
He said, that's despicable. Yeah. That's dishonest. Yeah. I'm just like, I could have quoted things he said himself where he said, well, I couldn't be sure if it's God or some space alien. And so he just flipped out. I said, you're just being unreasonable. And I can't believe, well, no, I can't believe. A lot of people were saying he won the debate. I'm just like, on what? He was just screaming and looking authoritative. That's all theatrics. That wasn't substance. That wasn't substance. And I gave him a lot of reasons he might consider that there's a God. And so what you just said about
your introduction was really, really fantastic. And after you debate with him, I wrote him an email. I just made a Gmail account with a random name. I didn't tell who I was. And then I mentioned your debate with him, and I said, listen, only the introduction of your debate with Sal would have been sufficient for you to consider and acknowledge a creator. And he, as an answer, he put ROFL. I'm rolling on the floor laughing.
Yeah. Just
so
like I said, he's an intellectual lightweight. I said, no wonder he doesn't want to debate certain things, because he'll look stupid. And the thing was, the irony was, I'm sorry.
All that he can do is hiding through his aggressiveness and through his shouting and cutting off other people when they are talking. That's how he is hiding his insecurity.
Yeah, and in fact, my debate coach, who coached people internationally, he said, if your opponent starts to get mad, keep him angry through the debate. And he was angry through the debate. I said, keep him. If he starts to get angry, keep him angry. And I did that because my debate coach said, okay, that's indicating he's running out of arguments. He can only do theater and scream.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, it may be, there is a saying that it's not what you say, it's how you say it. So on some level, the theatrics are very persuasive, but not on substance. It's just an act. It's just an act, just like an actor. So
I say like this, Sal, there is a discrepancy between how you say something and the substance of what you are saying. And you can say something with very outspokenly, but what you are saying has little weight or substance. And you can say something very calmly, very rationally, without being outspoken or something like that, but with a high semantic weight. And that's what you did. You were far superior intellectually than he was, and that's what made him go off the lines.
Yep. He knew it. I think he knew it. He's getting outclassed, and he was trying to dodge. And they're just like silly things. They're just like, I made a very simple statement. I said, we don't have perfect knowledge. He got livid. He said, I didn't say we had perfect knowledge. You're misrepresenting. That's so dishonest. I said, I didn't say that I could have said, I didn't say that you said that, Matt. But the guy was just going nuts. And then one time, what was it? I said, he did get insulted, but I really was trying to put him in his place. I said, you don't have a monopoly. I don't know my exact words, but if I had to say it now, I said, you don't have a monopoly on how to define what reasonable is. Mm-hmm. And boy, he flipped out when I said that. Because I was just putting him in his place. I said, you're not in a position to tell everyone what's reasonable. Boy, he got really angry. Because I was calling him out on it. I said, I'm not going to play your game where I'm going to just succumb to your definition of how things are. Dr. Sanford has told me many times, he said, the one who defines the terms wins the debate. And I wasn't going to let him define what reasonable meant. And and then he said, I said, I could explain the math here. He said, I don't want to be lectured because, I played craps for a living. And I just laughed at him. And I was going to try to explain it. He said, I don't need a lecture. I was just like, well, okay, we don't have a conversation because I have the equivalent of graduate level math degrees because I have an MS in physics. I also have an undergrad in math. And some of the stuff he was saying just wasn't adding up. I said, okay, you want, I could show you how some of this math works if you want to invoke other gods and stuff, because he was trying to criticize Pascal's wager with other gods. And he would have nothing of it. And I was like, okay, this isn't about really an exchange of information, finding the truth. This is about Matt Dillahunty trying to promote himself and have more theater and play to his. It's not
all about him. And my evaluation of him is that he is a very bad debater. He is not a good debater, and he doesn't know how to have good conversations and productive conversations, because he also doesn't know how to let other people speak. He cuts them off all the time, and that's what he also did in your debate with him. And I think that's not the way to go. I mean, if you want to have honest conversation with someone else, it is very important to listen what someone else has to say, and to evaluate the other person, and then actually try even to extract something that you can learn. But these guys, it's all about themselves and to beat the other part. That's all what he tries to do, and it's about who screams louder than in the debate, and that's not good. That's not good dialogue, you know.
Exactly. Hey, I'm gonna share where, I don't know if you saw this on my channel, where I talked about the anti-theists are angry, narcissistic, antisocial dogmatists.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. Did you see that video? So I'm putting it in the chat here. And when I heard some people that said they were my friends and they are favoring Matt Dillahunty's behavior, I said, I don't want to deal business with these guys. If you want to, if you think that it's right for me to be treated the way that he treated me, with misrepresenting and making false accusations and screaming at me and cutting me off, and you think that that's good behavior, I have no dealing with you guys anymore. I mean, that
it's not good behavior. And besides this, in 5 calls, I think it was 5 calls that I had at his show, on 4 he did hang up on me, and the only one, yeah, and the only one where he did not hang up was because previously he didn't know who was on the line. He did bet that he would not hang up on the next caller, otherwise he would lose $20. And it was me on the line, and so he didn't hang up on that one. But who saved him was his co-host, which is Jamie, which then had a way to finish the conversation very rapidly, you know. But that's their stick, you know, and they see that someone has a little bit more education, they simply hang up on the caller.
Yeah, and you know, you see, he's saying if God would show him, he would believe. God is providing him.
Yeah,
is giving him an opportunity to study biology, and people are trying to tell him, and he just said, this isn't about, he said, go talk to a biologist. That's the problem. Anyway,
hi Top Dog.
take care.
Hey.